your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Hey, good evening, horror fans. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host Jerry here with my partner Matt, and in this post-Halloween episode, Matt, we have a difficult topic, a difficult subject, and something that is more of a real-world horror than some of the fantastical things we talk about. And we're going to talk about awful addictions. And again, this is a category that really can really dig up some real life difficult scenarios.
Yeah, it's interesting revisiting this in the film format. We recently this past year wrote a book. We co-authored a novella together about addictions and kind of used the vampire format for that. So it was kind of interesting over the past year of us kind of touching on that. But it's interesting to see different dynamics in horror use this topic. Addictions can be extremely powerful physically and psychologically and emotionally for people. It's almost like a form of possession. And once you become addicted to something, you kind of create this new neurological personality within you that wants what it wants. And you really have to sever those connections by creating new circuits around those desires. And so you have to have a healthy relationship with the things that entice you, or they'll just continue to possess you, like learning your triggers, right? Like people that have, are alcoholics, they really have to know what triggers them to want alcohol. And if they don't, they'll just continue to keep drinking. And one example of that is people find new religion, right? They find a new religion that kind of overhauls their old personality. And now they have this new circuitry they can kind of tend to, which you see that AA does that with Christianity. And there's other ways to do it as well, but it's really like overhauling your entire personality.
Yeah, to me, I agree with you. It's an interesting topic because I've had some life experiences with people in my family and growing up with addictions, and some of the research we did on the novella that you mentioned. And I feel like it's a topic that really can impact just about anybody, and so many people have had it impact their lives. So some real world horror, if you will. But as we like to do, we kind of have a diverse look at a couple different movies. And the first one, while it touches on a real life horror and a real world scenario, it does so in a very dark, humorous manner. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, humorous is one way to put it. It's very over the top. It's comedy splatter to the max. It's a movie that does a very good job of not putting it in your face that this is what it's about, but also it's very apparent that this is what it's about, and it just throws in lots of comedy.
Yeah, the movie we're talking about is our first film for tonight. It's Brain Damage from 1988, directed by Frank Henenlotter. And if you're familiar with Frank Henenlotter's work, his biography reads Basket Case, Brain Damage, Frankenhooker, and then Basket Case 2. So he really is dead centered in the dark comedic area of horror, and he takes serious subjects and he really turns them on their head.
Yeah, which I find really interesting and fun. Funny thing about Brain Damage is that towards the end of the movie, there's a little cameo from Basket Case.
Yes, yeah. I made a note of that too.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
So our movie starts with an older couple, and they're buying pig brains from butchers, and they're trying to feed Elmer. And they go into their bathroom, and the tub is full of water, but he is gone. And the couple freaks out, and they're screaming and they're frantic, and they go tearing through the entire apartment complex looking for him. And later we see them laying on the ground, foaming at the mouth. And
yeah, they're having withdrawals.
We've yet to be introduced to what Elmer is, but we know from their reaction and from the withdrawal symptoms, it's something that they really, really wanted and needed.
Yeah,
and they're also of addiction in this film.
Yeah, and they're, like you said, they're frantically running around like they're looking for their bag of drug, right? Like where'd you put it? Where'd you put it? And they're just acting very like crackheads.
Yeah. And we cut to our main character, Brian. He's supposed to go out with his girlfriend, Barbara, but he's not feeling well. he's in bed and he doesn't want to get up, and he asked his brother Mike, who he lives with, to take Barbara out for the night. And I found it funny, as soon as Barbara walked in, Mike seemed to be eyeballing her and, giving her the look, even though it's his brother's girlfriend. So he willingly accepts to take her out in his place.
Yeah, he acts really sweet to her the whole time. It's almost obvious what's going to happen. When
Yep.
you're watching it. Yeah. He's kind of got a thing for her, so he's completely fine with it. Yeah, I'll take her out.
Yeah, got you covered, brother. Brian wakes up and his bed is all covered in blood, and there's blood on him, and he finds a hole in the back of his neck. And we get our first appearance of Elmer. Elmer is a big, phallic, rotted cucumber looking thing with cartoon eyes and mouth, and he's black and wrinkled and with blue veins and goo running on him.
Yeah, just a really visceral. I had noted that it kind of reminded me of South Park's Mr. Hanky Poo.
Yeah.
He's just this silly, disgusting small thing. Like the kind of the humor there. Yeah.
And of course he has. So the appearance is just like what the heck is this?
Yeah.
It's somewhat ridiculous. And then he delivers this voice, and he has an older, elegant, almost butler-like voice, almost Alfred from Batman kind of delivery and it's just so, the dichotomy is so strange and just like, what the heck is this?
Yeah, you think he's gonna act really like snarly and vicious, and he's like, "Come on, man."
Yeah. And so he injects through his mouth of dozens of teeth in different angles and blue pointers. He sticks his blue pointer in the hole in the back of Brian's brain, and there's a cool special effect where it shows like the inside of a brain, and you see the blue liquid like leaking in, and you see like sparks. So it's triggering something in the brain.
Yeah, some kind of cosmic drug that just like induces perfect euphoria, and he just kind of injects it himself right into you.
That's the exact word I wrote, that Brian becomes euphoric, and he's running around, and now he's out in the streets, and he's seeing the world in bright colors, and it's like he's inside of a disco ball.
Yeah, like inside of a disco ball. It's great.
He ends up running through a junkyard, and a security guard finds him and is going to arrest him because he's acting crazy. And Elmer gets the security guard, and we find that Elmer eats by attaching his mouth to the center of someone's forehead and basically burrowing through and eating their brain.
Yeah, it reminded me of the balls in the Phantasm, where they just attach yourself to the head.
Yeah. Well, you see him chewing, and the tail is wiggling while he's munching away. So he eats the brains of the security guard. Brian asks him to be injected again because the lights are fading off, and you can see how quickly and strongly this addiction sets in. And it's, again, you mentioned it's not a deep mystery what the parallel we're drawing here. It's just very clearly a story about addiction. It's very clearly from the 80s. It's probably a take on crack. There might even be some AIDS epidemic references in here, but it's not really hidden.
No, and even the conversation they have back and forth, it's almost like that. Like it's a cross between like him and his drug dealer, and like him and the internal dialogue. Like, come on, man, let me just get one more hit, and he's just like, not right now. And he's like, please. He's like, all right, if you feed me one more brain, I'll give you. He's like, which is an allegory to your own brain, right? Like, all right, it's gonna cost you some cells.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we cut to Mike and Barbara. They're worried because Barbara comes over and she can't get a hold of Mike, or she can't get a hold of Brian, excuse me. And Mike says he won't leave his room. He's put 4 locks on his bedroom door and 4 locks on the bathroom door, and he won't come out of he's only in his bedroom and bathroom. Yep. And we see Barbara yells to him, and we see a ridiculous scene where he's in the tub and he starts playing with Elmer in the tub, almost like a crazed little kid with a rubber ducky or something. It's completely bananas.
and he's in there like giggling, going woo.
And they're listening at the door, like, what is wrong with this guy?
Yeah. Which is another allegory to just being locking yourself in a room and being high on drugs. And people are like, you got to come out of there, man. And he's just ignoring it. And yeah.
So they go out to their date, and Barbara's confronting him, and he said, is there someone else? Are you cheating on me? Are you on drugs? And Elmer rides in his shirt at all times. He's a parasitic in nature. He attaches to a host and gets, this symbiotic relationship where we feed each other. So he's always under his shirt somewhere. And he starts to tell Barbara what's going on. And he's like, you get the impression he got bit to told him to shut up.
Yeah.
And then he immediately starts hallucinating. He sees the meatballs on his plate as pulsing brains, and he freaks out and
they're
leaves.
Breathing. Yeah, they're breathing.
Yeah.
They're breathing. Yeah.
So he freaks out, and he runs, and he leaves Barbara sitting there. So they go out into an alley, and he gets injected. He gets hooked up, and they go into this nightclub called Hell. It's kind of like a violent thrashers kind of club.
Yeah, it was like an 80s punk. Yeah, one of those like punk clubs. They have got like, spike tops, haircut and stuff, grungy clothes.
Leather and a lot of dog collars and that kind of scene. And he meets a girl, and they go out into the alley, and like they're kissing, and in a very controversial scene, she drops down to her knees, unzips his pants, and Elmer emerges from his zipper straight into the back of her throat, where Brian is holding the top of her head, and it's not even disguised what it's, the phallic shape and the coming out of the zipper, and he eats her brain by burrowing through the back of her mouth up into her head.
Yeah, this isn't like Alien. Like this isn't like Alien where it's a quick shot. Like they show this for, I don't know, 2 minutes. Like
it goes on.
Like it's a scene.
It's a scene. Now, many of the crew walked out when they were filming this scene. They thought it went too far, which I thought was interesting. You're making a movie like this, you're like, well, you can't go too far, but they thought it went too far.
They got a little uncomfortable with it. Like, what are we filming here? Like, what is this? Yeah, because they indulge in the scene. It's very obvious what the scene is.
Yeah, they do. And to me, you get it's the phallic reference is very clear. It goes on longer than you think it should. But the grossest part to me was when Elmer retracts and goes back into his pants. He's got like a chunk of brain slapping out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And the brain like slaps on his open pants and then goes inside with him. And I was just like, okay, that's really gross.
Yeah, I agree. That was probably the grossest part when he goes back in there. I thought the same thing. I was, he went back in.
He brought it with him. Like, finish your brains, for God's sake.
Or just like get back on his shoulder and be like, all right, I'm done. You know what I mean? Like, why did he have to go back in? Like,
he went back.
And as soon as he goes back, after that scene, he runs back to the trash. He immediately takes his pants and underwear off. He's like, no.
Yeah, he's in an alley back by his house, and he's throwing out his bloody underwear, and he's confronted by a man named Morris, who is the man we saw at the beginning that originally had Elmer and was looking for him. And he wants him back. He says, give him back. He's mine. And he also tells him that you can't feed him human brains. It makes him too powerful. So we get a little, and he gets a little backstory about Elmer's been around for hundreds of years. He's been passed from, person to person, and
all these ancient people, like these kings used to have him, and people would come and attack the king and start wars over him, and they wanted him. He was like the great creator. He gave like super creative, like, artistic juices to people, and everyone became addicted to him.
Mm-hmm.
And even the guy, as he's now in this new scene, he's very like zombie looking. He's got this like pasty zombie look to him. Like he's strung out, and he just needs it
withdrawal, complete, overwhelmed by the withdrawal. So Brian decides he's got to leave. He moves into a seedy motel, which is a nasty place.
Which
And
is again another allegory to the drug addiction, right? It's like he's at rock bottom. He's standing at some halfway crack house. That's what it's like.
yep, and he has, very similar to like a scene where people try to get clean, and they go cold turkey. He has a standoff with Elmer. He's like, "I'm not getting you any brains," and he's like, "Well, I'm not getting you any juice." And Elmer's like, "Okay." He's like, "We'll see we'll see who wins this."
That's actually that scene made me laugh more than any other scene because Brian's talking to him, right? And it's just like completely and Elmer is completely normal. And he's like, "Is she dead?" And he's like, "Of course she's dead." And he says at one point, he says, "You're a wreck, Brian. You need to relax."
Yeah.
I was just laughing. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not a movie you take seriously, even though there are serious messages in the undertones.
Yeah.
Brian ends up puking from withdrawal. Of course, he loses this battle of wills, and he's hallucinating. And then we see him. This hotel is so seedy that they have a group shower, almost like a YMCA type of thing. So he goes in there and he's acting really squirrely. And while he's in the shower, standing there with a towel, kind of like hiding in the corner, Elmer attacks a man who's on the toilet. And he's sitting on the toilet with his pants around his ankles, and Elmer's attached to his forehead, eating his brains.
There's just blood coming down, dripping, an unnecessary amount. So
Brian lost this standoff, and they end up going back home. And Brian goes to bed. And Mike and Barbara come home from looking for him. They're both distraught. They can't find him anywhere. And it's almost funny because their being upset ends very quickly as Mike tells Barbara he has feelings for her, and they start kissing. And then the next thing you know, they're in Mike's bed, like just like that.
Yeah.
Like they weren't that worried about finding Brian. Like,
yeah,
we can't find him. Okay, let's move on to our other activities.
Yeah, this will calm us down.
But they don't know Brian's in bed in the bedroom next door and can hear everything. And he hallucinates joining in with them and eating Barbara's brain. So he's really a mess.
Yeah, and he's got these like in his vision, he's got these like spores on him or something like that. It was weird.
Yeah. So he bursts in on him, and you think, well, he's going to be mad for what happens, and he's really not. He tells him, "You guys both need to be gone when I get back, for your own safety." So he leaves, and Barbara follows him. She's trying to track him down, and she's like, "Wait, Brian," and sits down next to him on a subway. And this is where you're talking about a man gets on the subway carrying a basket. A wicker
and it's
basket.
Dressed just like him. It's actually the same. It's the outfit. Yeah.
And he just sits down across from them and then shortly moves. But it was just like, I'm like, hey, I know that guy in a basket.
He looks at him and goes, "You guys are freaks." And he takes off.
Yeah. Which is just funny. Like the humor is forefront in this movie.
Very self-aware.
Yeah. And there's this is kind of a goofy scene where Elmer keeps coming out, and it's like an animated version of Elmer. He keeps coming out of Brian's mouth and saying something, and then shooting back in and hiding.
Yeah.
It's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit with the animation coming out of the real person.
Yeah, they're on that seedy New York City subway, so like every once in a while the lights will go out, and then like you'll see him like come in and out of the picture when that happens.
And Barbara leans over and she's trying to make everything better, and she kisses him. And of course, we know Elmer's at this point is hiding in his mouth. And they have like what appears to other people on the subway or the train a long makeout session, which is actually Elmer eating her brains through the back of her mouth.
Yeah.
So Brian ends up just leaving her dead body on the train.
Yeah, completely strung out on drugs, so he's just like, I don't know, and takes off.
Yeah. He walks back towards home, and he ends up confronted by Morris and his wife, the couple from the beginning, and they have a gun, and they want Elmer back. And Elmer attacks the woman immediately and burrows through the middle of her forehead to eat her brain. And at this point, Morris tries to help his wife, and he drops the gun. And through the struggle, Elmer ends up attacking him. And he's got to coolies coming in from the side, almost like a temple, you know, where he's munching. And at this point, Elmer goes to inject Brian. Like, he's kind of made his choice. Brian feeds me human brains. I'm with Brian.
Yeah. And well, he wants his juice and he's like, hold on, I'm not done. And he's like, come on, man. He's like, all right, real quick.
Yeah. So he goes and he slips the blue thing inside of Brian's neck, but Morris is not quite dead. And at this point, he gets up and he grabs Elmer and he squeezes him. And when he squeezes him, the trickle of blue juice that we see go into the brain is now a gush.
Yeah, he's like squeezing into it, overdosing,
pouring into a complete overdose, right? And Morris continues to squeeze Elmer, and blue goo oozes from him, and he kind of like curls up and croaks. And then Morris dies, Elmer dies, and Brian is sitting there with this complete blue juice overload in his head. He grows this huge bubble in the middle of his forehead.
Like a UFC knot, yeah.
Yeah, and there's blue leaking out of the knot in his head. There's blue running out of his eyes and his nose.
Coming out his mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just completely overdosed. At this point, he takes the gun that Morris had dropped, and you hear him shoot himself. They don't show it. But when they arrive, people arrive to, you know, for the gunshots and the police, he had blown the top of his head off, and there's just a huge hole where straight up is just shooting all the light and the electricity that you know you see inside the brain when he gets the juice.
Yeah.
And that's where the movie ends. He's screaming with a giant hole in his head.
Yeah, the end. I put that in my notes. I had a the end LOL. I was like, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, it's just it's an interesting movie. If you took it serious, you when you were introduced to Elmer, you'd be like, what the heck is this? This thing looks like a Muppet reject.
Yeah, the Island of Misfit Muppets that they tried coming up with, like it was like a disgusting, dirty, wet sock.
But if you embrace the over the top comedic nature of it, and you look at the commentary on the addiction that it's kind of poking at the whole time. I mean, you see a guy, he loses everything, loses his loved ones, loses his whole sense of identity. There really are some true parallels to the path he goes down, as ridiculous as his journey is.
Yeah, it's very over the top funny, but a lot of the conversation, like I said, a lot of the dialogue that he has with this ridiculous alien, there's a lot of truth in that dialogue. You know, like what he's saying, he's like, come on, man, give me a fix. And he keeps saying that the whole time. Even after he watches someone murder someone, he's like, okay, I just need to get a fix and I can get over this. And then I don't have to think about it. And he's like, all right, just a little bit though. He's like, Brian, you got to chill out with this. Like he's kind of feeding it to him and knows how he's kind of getting addicted. It's just so absurd, but it works.
You know, it just leads you to thinking about the how far people will go and what they're willing to do and what they're willing to look past. And it's you know, it really does have some sad undertones when you really think about all that stuff, because it does show it even again in this ridiculous world that they created.
Yeah, people, you know, drugs can be so powerful. Drugs are so powerful that some people get so addicted, they're just willing to be homeless and do drugs. That's how much they want it. They'd just rather live under a bridge and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sad. And again, that's the nature of our category. So it's a fitting movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Our second film in this category is a wow, what a tonally different shift. This movie is Bug, from 2006, directed by Exorcist director William Friedkin. And man, this is a dark movie.
It's very dark. I one thing I like about this movie, there's not a lot of actors in it. It's a small set. There's only like, I think one set, maybe like two set pieces. There's the bar and the little hotel or the little condo that they have. And just a couple actors, and I think Michael Shannon and Ashley Judd. Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon do a fantastic acting job in this.
I agree with most of that. I'm going to touch on a couple things as we go through here. I I thought Ashley Judd was miscast.
Hmm.
It didn't seem like the role for her, and maybe that's just a personal preference. I'm not a fan. There is a scene we're going to talk about where she goes into this completely unhinged rant that from what I could read looks like about half of it was completely improvised, and I thought that was pretty amazing. Um, but she didn't fit the role to me. But
Yeah, I can see that because she's tend to do like movies, either kind of like drama movies, but that are more like involved with like court, and that she doesn't really do like these like supernatural like thrillers that I can think of.
Michael Shannon is perfect in his role. I will say that. But
Yeah.
so we start with our main character, Agnes. She's a lonely drunk. She lives in a ratty motel. Her phone keeps ringing, but nobody's there. She keeps answering it, and we see her. We get a real quick picture of her miserable existence. She drinks. She's alone, and the next day she struggles to do the simplest task, like just go buy groceries. And just really quickly they paint a picture of kind of a miserable existence, and we don't know a
Yeah,
lot about her at this point, just other than wow, pretty pathetic.
yeah. She's not eating well. She's not living well. She works late nights. She works at a bar. She kind of just has wads of ones on her in her purse. She smokes cigarettes and drinks during the day. And yeah, there's just her life is a mess.
Yeah. We see her go work at the dive bar with her friend RC, who's basically her only friend. We figure out at this point, and we find out that her abusive ex was released from prison, and she thinks he's probably the one making the phone calls, and it's upsetting her. And like you said, there's just gloom in her life at this point.
Yeah, she's kind of being harassed by her abusive ex. She's got pizza boxes and wine bottles all around her place, and she's kind of sleeping in. She looks like a mess, and yeah, it paints a really dark picture for what's going on.
Yep. RC introduces her to a customer in the bar, Peter, and he's kind of a unique character. It's Michael Shannon, as you mentioned, and the three plan on going to a party together, but they end up back at Agnes's place. And again, she lives in basically a motel room that's been converted into an apartment that's small and dingy and not very nice.
Yeah, it looks like a rundown motel.
RC is called away for an emergency, and Peter stays. And although they're both a little awkward and act odd, there seems to be a connection between the two. And Agnes invites him to stay over the night, completely platonically. He has demonstrated no interest in sex, or he's just an odd character. But she's so desperate for companionship that's fine. She just, hey, we want a place to stay tonight. You can
Yeah.
crash here.
Yeah, he's really socially awkward. He's like, "You're really beautiful," and she's like, "Oh, okay," and kind of laughs. And he's like, I'm sorry. Did I make you uncomfortable?" Like he's just really socially awkward.
Some of them. This was my other point I was going to get to. Some of the dialogue, and I couldn't tell. I've seen this a couple times now. I couldn't tell if it was to show how mentally stunted they were and how socially awkward they were, but some of the dialogue is just bad.
It
Like
is.
it's hard to imagine people talking like this or addressing each other this way. It just read really awkward to me.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of it comes off as this like very desperate, two desperate people talking to each other, but it doesn't happen in real life like the way they just kind of connected. Like I just met you. How about you stay at my house, even though you're talking about how desperate you are? Like usually like the typically like the woman, the way he's acting probably would be like, you gotta go. I don't know you. You know what I mean? Like, but she's just like, she invites him in. Like, I kind of like you. You're sweet. But even though he's being really weird, she just
Yeah.
invites him to stay. Yeah, a lot of the dialogue was really like, that wouldn't happen like that.
Yeah, and it's just like it's a mix of weird. Like she's
Yeah.
a mess, he's weird, and we get this toxic combination, just mixing deeper and deeper as we go.
But I think that was a lot of a part of the dialogue was what they were trying to do. What they were trying to go for was codependency. And so when
Mhm.
you have two people that are addicts, as toxic as they are for each other, even if they know it, they'll still stay together because they're codependent, whether it's on the drug or emotionally, or
Yeah.
maybe one of them has a car and they both need it. And it just becomes a super toxic relationship. And I believe that's what they were trying to paint the picture with when in context with these two characters.
Yeah. In the morning, Peter goes to get breakfast, and Agnes's ex, Jerry, which I find it hard to believe anybody named Jerry would be that kind of man, but he shows up, and he is it's Harry Connick Jr., and he is stereotypically abusive, controlling, possessive. He's just that, that movie character guy that is just a bastard.
Just got out of jail and he's like, "Where's my girl? Who's been talking to her?" Yeah, just real. It was very stereotypical character, but he did it well.
Yeah. He finally leaves when Peter returns, but he does threaten to come back. And at this point, Agnes opens up to Peter a little bit about some of her life and how she got to where she is, and that her son went missing 10 years ago, and she asked Peter if he'll stay, and says she feels safer with him there. And from that, hey, you can stay over because I'm, unspoken, I'm lonely, to now it's spoken, I want you to stay, I feel safer with you there. You see that need digging deeper quickly.
Yeah, and that's the unrealistic part is they've known each other for one day and they're suddenly in love.
Yeah, and I never even view it as love. It's
not real love. No,
it's like you talked about the codependency, and she's just so lonely and so afraid and so miserable, and it just gives her somebody, and it's really sad. It's really like I say, this is a bleak movie. There's not a uplifting note anywhere in here.
No, and she, like you said, she lost her son that she had with a man who's a convict who just got out of jail. She wants nothing to do with, but he's now harassing her, and so she's never recovered from that trauma.
When she tells him that she wants him to stay and that she feels safer with him there, he begins to reveal his deep conspiracy theories, and that they follow about him never being safe in the world of machines, and no one will be safe in this world anymore. And that's his counter to her saying she'll feel safer with him there. And it's like she's so needy that it doesn't turn her off the way you would think.
As soon as she mentions machines, even she's like, "Wow, that's really deep." And he's like, "You don't believe me?" And she's like, "Oh, no." Like she suddenly doesn't want to push him away, right? Even though at first she is kind of thrown off, but he's like, "You don't believe me?" So even now he's kind of becoming like, I don't want to say abusive, but like abusive. He's kind of becoming like
controlling.
Controlling. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and at several points through this journey, she has well-founded skepticism, but she's always afraid to push it because, we'll see shortly, she's afraid of him leaving.
Yeah. He says, "Oh, I guess you hate me," right after he talks about the machines. And she's like, "I never even said I hate you." And like, he's just extremely insecure, but then uses that against her. And so it's very controlling and manipulative what he's doing.
And Peter, completely agree. He's controlling, he's manipulative. He also has like a neediness to him. And, despite his conspiracy theories, he brings out a nurturing side to Agnes that she longed to have since losing her son. She needs to be needed.
And he's taking advantage of that kind of.
Absolutely. They finally sleep together after one of the worst dialogue in the whole movie about them getting there. And I think it was meant to be awkward, but they jump between like coy to funny to
yeah.
I didn't like it at all.
He said, "I haven't been to bed with a woman in a long time. I think I could go to bed with you." It was kind of like Forrest Gump, And then she's like, "Come here, boy," and I was just like, "Who wrote this?"
Yeah, there was things like that that like pulled me out of the story. I'm like, this is not how I would imagine this conversation going.
I agree. I agree 100%. It kind of pulls you out from the moment. You know, you're kind of like, let's get on to the next scene.
Yeah, we can see they're both very lonely. They're both in this life that has left them in solitude and without anyone, and they just they just are drawn together.
Yeah, they're drawing the meta picture well, but then, like you said, that dialogue just doesn't connect with it.
Absolutely, and the picture of the codependency and the picture of the mutual destructive behavior is all painted.
Yep.
And I know the dialogue is meant to get you there. We get there. You just could have done way better dialogue.
I agree. 100%. Yeah.
Well, the act of their lovemaking triggers a break in Peter, and he wakes up finding a bug. He refers to it as an aphid on the bed.
I actually thought that was the only funny part of the movie. I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but she keeps asking about bugs, and he's like, "No, that's this kind. No, that's this kind. No, that's the like." He's being like, "Who cares?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he's being like meticulous about what type it is, and he's almost being condescending about it. He's like, "No, that's this kind of thing." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
He's
and
a closet entomologist or something.
Right. I thought it was a little humorous. Yeah.
I got you. And as the audience, he's like, look at the bug, and we can't see anything. It's small, it's tiny, it doesn't show you anything, and you're like, is it there? Is it not there? And I thought that was well presented because it appears Agnes can't see it, but he keeps saying, look, no, you got to look closer. It's right here, and eventually she sees it too.
Yeah.
So now that he's convinced her that the bug is there, he wants to fumigate in the morning, and she suggests they tell the motel manager. And at this, he freaks out. He doesn't want anybody else involved. He doesn't trust anybody, and he leaves. And she is devastated.
She was just manipulated. Yeah, you sleep with me, now you're going to leave. Yeah.
And they've known each other for just a couple days. She locks herself in the bathroom and throws herself on the floor, and just is absolutely devastated. And Peter returns, and now they have this conversation through the door where he starts telling her a long explanation about military experiments and bugs implanted in his body, and they were doing tests on him, and he escaped, and they're pursuing him, and she's listening through the door, and I did think her acting was good here. His acting was good through the whole thing.
Yeah,
because her face is conveying all the emotions that we would expect hearing something like this. She's shock and disbelief, but she's also so relieved that he returned that it kind of overwhelms the others. And the defining scene in the movie to me was after hearing all this and processing all those emotions, she opens the door and just says, "Don't leave me."
Yeah. And it's right back to that codependency, like that he doesn't really want to leave, as flustered as he is, and as toxic as he knows this might be for his personal detriment, that what he thinks is going on, and he still comes back. And then she's like, just like, I can't believe I let you in my life just for one night for you to hook up with me and take off. And like, normal people would have just been like, okay, this is enough, and we're going our separate ways. But it's bringing back that codependency where they just can't seem to do it.
And I feel like with that one phrase, after hearing all that, and that's what you say, her loneliness and neediness is going to open her up to any delusion he conjures.
Yes. Yeah. And that kind of becomes like the fulcrum for the movie from here on out.
Yep. And it's at this point, the question I asked myself right then and there is, at this point, if you had to say whose sickness is greater, it would be hard to decide at that point.
That's a good point. That's what I was thinking too. I was like, well, who's really sick here? Is he just doing what he does, and now and she's kind of like, and she's already sick, so she's kind of like inviting that into her life? Or that's, I thought the same exact thing.
So at this point, her skepticism is overwhelmed by her fear of him leaving, and her doubts all shrink until they become full on belief. And the two, they start to cut and gash themselves trying to dig egg sacs out of their body. They had put flypaper up on the ceiling, and that's now replaced by covering all the walls and ceiling with aluminum foil.
And it's never
And
mentioned. It's never mentioned, but it's an allegory to drug abuse. Like you'll see, like, like meth addicts, like they'll scratch a lot, so they'll have all these marks on them, right? And that's kind of what they like. Suddenly, that now she's getting all these like itch marks because she thinks she has them, so she's picking them out, even though like as an audience, we don't know if it's what's really going on. Is it in their head or if it's real?
yeah, this is a make you itch movie though, that's for sure.
It's pretty unnerving at some points.
And one of the things I liked is, so now they cover the wall and ceilings with the aluminum foil, and they hang electric bug zappers all around. And if you've used the electric bug zappers, they create this glow, this blue aura, and now you're encased in aluminum foil. It's like you're a human TV dinner, and basically the rest of the movie has this blue glow and this sense of confinement and constriction.
Yeah, and they've kind of created their own through their own psychosis. They've created this own shell where they're not trying to like interact with the outside world. They're trying to prevent their signals from being transmitted. That's why they have all the foil up and everything. I actually thought that would have been a pretty funny like entrance to like giving out Halloween candy. Like you have this like foil set up and you come out itching trying to give out candy to kids with like fake bug bites all over you. I was like, that'd be really creepy.
Yeah. Peter's psychiatrist, Dr. Sweet, shows up with Jerry, and Peter's in the other room hiding, and the doctor sends Jerry away because he upsets Agnes, and he wants Agnes to help Peter, but he quickly realizes that she is delusional and she's not going to help him. So he changes courses, and he's playing into her psychosis by saying that, now he's admitting he's part of the conspiracy and he knows what happened to her son. So he's
he even admits to seeing one of the bugs.
Yeah.
He's like, you see this? And like she pulls up and he's like, oh, it's not just a delusion. Okay, I'll listen to what you have to say. And it's like he didn't really see it. He's just kind of psychologically playing along, right?
Yeah. So he just, this is tactic, and I don't know if that's a morally valid tactic to use on somebody struggling with their mental health, but that's what he tries to do to get her on his side with the enticement of knowledge that he really doesn't have.
Yeah, I don't think anything this guy does is morally proper.
So Peter emerges and he stabs him maniacally. He's just stabbing him over and over, and just, they're hard.
It's a slasher.
Thrusts.
Yeah, like a slasher movie. Yeah, his guts are coming out. Yeah.
And Agnes is now freaking out because now she lost the connection to information about her son. And then a pretty good scene that I think really touches on how deep this shared psychosis has gone. He's like, he's a robot. Mm-hmm. He wasn't even real. And he puts her hand on his dead body and says, see, synthetic. It's not even close. And
then he takes a chunk out and like puts it up to her and like touches it and like eats the blood. He's like, it's not even real. None of this is real. He's a robot. He's a machine.
And even though it feels like a regular body to her, she wants to believe. And this is the part where she goes into her own personal rant, where she takes his conspiracy theories and she echoes them and expands on them to include everything bad that's ever happened to her. And if you look at how miserable her life is, it's an appealing idea to buy into this conspiracy creating this terrible life for you rather than accepting your own bad reality.
Yeah, and I thought the writing for that scene was particularly good because just playing connect the dots was. I tried to rewind it several times and try to connect the dots, and I thought they actually did a good job writing out that conspiracy line. He goes from the 1954 Bilderberg Hotel to Timothy McVeigh to John Doe 2 to FBI, and he kind of Ted Kaczynski, like they kind of like he like lays out this like methodical plan that was going on. and he tries to make it believable. And I thought that was some good writing right there. And he tries to get her in on it. Like, listen, you're part of this now.
Like the really good parts like that, to me, make the bad parts more frustrating, because it's like, how can you deliver this gem and then come up with this buffoonery of dialogue?
Yeah, I agree. It's sometimes I don't know how that happens. It's one of my biggest pet peeves in movies is bad dialogue. And it's just, there's only so many elements to the movie, right? You got the sound score, the cinematography, the acting itself, right? And then some action and the narration where it's going, and then you have the dialogue.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you mess up the dialogue, it can really sink a movie sometimes,
For sure. This is just like a book. If you start reading a book and the dialogue sounds like a writer's idea of sentences he wants to put together, rather than how really people communicate, it pulls me out immediately.
100%, same way. I'll put the book down.
Yeah.
I'll be like, I'm not going along for this ride.
At this point, Jerry tries to get in, but Agnes shoots him with a nail gun, which is always handy to have around. But I think they've reached a point with her speech, which again they said half of it was improvised, which I thought was an awesome bit of acting by her. But their delusions now feed each other fully, like they're fully engrossed in this shared delusional world.
Yeah, she fully believes that, and he got her to keep doing it. Like, all right, more, keep going with this, keep going with this. How did I get here? Why am I here? And your child's missing because of your ex, and your ex is released from. Yeah, and he kind of like strings her along with breadcrumbs to get her to believe her own lie. Right?
Yep. So they decide at this point to strip naked and douse themselves in gasoline, which was already there and prepared, which kind of makes you think maybe this was their end game all along. And they decide that it's better to end their life in a fiery blaze than continue to suffer the cruelties that life has in store for them. And and that's basically how the movie ends.
Yeah.
Like they're inside a giant Jiffy Pop, or as it is.
Yeah.
And they just set themselves ablaze. Yeah, again, it's a bleak portrayal of mental illness and addiction. Michael Shannon is great as Peter. Ashley Judd has some great moments, although I just never felt like she was right for the role. She does really do some really good parts.
I will agree with you 100% on that. Yeah, I see. You see it. There's definitely a contrast between her and Michael Shannon.
It's a difficult movie to recommend. If you say, hey, you know what you want to watch is this, people will call you like, what the hell did you do to me?
Yeah, I'm not taking recommendations for you ever again.
Because it's claustrophobic, it's itchy, it's
psychotic,
maddening in some of the actions, and it's depressing. I think it delivers its message well. That doesn't mean I ever want to watch it again.
Yeah, it's a good character study, and if you want to see Michael Shannon, you want to see someone that's completely lost their mind and come off kind of like sheepish and show how that person has lost their mind. It's a good character study, I'd say. But yeah, it's not a Friday night movie with your friends. You know what I mean? It's just like it's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. But again, when the category is addiction and we're talking about some of the mental struggles, these things are dark, and they can be dark, and this doesn't shy away from that. In fact, it embraces it probably too much for some people.
Yeah, I agree. It takes that idea of people struggling with addictions and delusions and schizophrenic tendencies, and it runs with it the whole movie, and just doesn't let go until the very end.
You want to reach through the screen and grab and shake them. Like, what are you thinking? What are you saying here?
Tell the hotel manager, like, they gotta go.
Yeah, they definitely gotta go.
Yeah.
All right, so that is our topic for this week. Awful addictions, and again, we certainly don't make light of it. It's a very serious and real world subject, and these movies come at it in completely different directions, for sure. Which is part of the joy of what we do, but a good topic for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. A very serious topic. Two interesting movies, like you said, and I don't know if either of them I'd recommend it unless it's you're into that kind of genre. They're very niche movies.
Yeah, Agree with that. Agree with that. Okay, well, that's our show for this week. We appreciate you listening. As always, we are the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry, that is Matt, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.